Okay, so Harry, let's start today by discussing the larger fallout of Judge Engoron's ruling. I mean, what in your mind happens to Trump politically as well as legally as he faces the reality of the so-called corporate death penalty?
Oh, all right. So you're not talking about the gag order, you're talking about the fraud trial, yeah? So if that's right, first, you would know this better than me, and let me just say, as I always do about this case that has become front and center, it is the case that Michael Cohen built from the congressional testimony to me, and I've done my best to take a crash course in New York law. It's devastating. It's a big financial hit, but control. If he can't say what happens with 40 Wall Street, with Trump Tower, with the golf courses in New York, and even the other LLCs we don't know about, even though with complicated corporate arrangements, he'll still have things that he can mess around with. To me, that not only really is a body blow of near mortal force, but really hits him where he breathes. You would know this better, but some of the criminal stuff he almost seems to relish in a weird way. This is really calling him out as a fraud for his whole career, for the things he cares most about. I think this wounds him deeply, both in practical terms and psychological terms.
Look, I'm not going to argue with you on that one. I will say to you this. If in fact the corporate death penalty is imposed, and I understand that the first count, Judge Engoron found them guilty of fraud.
That's right.
And that the move right now is to declare the certificates of that incorporation invalid.
Those incorporations. Right. I was going to get to that, because the incorporation is of the Trump Corporation, which is what it's INC, LLC, whatever it's called. And you would know this better than me,
or six,
but that's not the Trump Organization, which seems to just be this free-floating umbrella term out there. Yeah.
Right. The real name is the Trump Corporation. The interesting thing is that there are like 600 sister related entities,
right,
all that have a connection into the Trump Corporation. Those two are no longer, pursuant to this decision, they're no longer allowed to operate in the state of New York.
Maybe. As I understand it, you would know better, but he has to take the further step of basically saying, Trump Jr., Eric, you can't mess around with anything for 5 years. Otherwise, I don't know if his order encompasses all the sister corps or not. So it's either big or totally comprehensive. You would know better, but that's still. I've been trying hard to figure it out. It's pretty murky.
Well, again, if there's connections to it, you just can't walk away from the fact that the certificates, the stock certificates, are now all declared invalid, thereby basically disgorging the entire Trump Corporation of whatever monies that they allegedly had made as a result of their improper activities.
Can I ask you a question, Michael?
Of course.
Well, so is that right as to all these sort of 600 sister corps, or is there an identified list of LLCs that may or may not include all his, corporate interests in the Empire State?
Right. So the ones that are involved with the state of New York, these are the ones that get affected by this decision. Yeah, all of them. The ones, for example, in Florida, Mar-a-Lago, unless there is some sort of a connection, but they'll end up trying to move that anyway. Here's where Tish James really thought through this. I mean, Donald could say whatever he wants about her. He could call her nasty names like racist and stupid and whatever he wants to say. Far from it. Let me tell you, when she turned around and she claims that there's going to be a baseline of $250 million, which is what they're seeking, that doesn't mean that it's $250 million, settlement. It's the base. It's the least amount that she would go for. I understand from, of course, my contacts there and my relationship to this case, that the amount is substantially higher. When I say substantially, more than double. So if in fact that's true, because you used 40 Wall Street as an example, let me tell you the problem that Donald has when it comes to 40 Wall Street. He owns 40 Wall Street, which, by the way, happens to be a land lease. So he doesn't own the land. He owns the right to have the building on it. I think it's maybe another 80 years or something like that. It was renewed. What's the value of a land lease office space? 1.2 million square feet. Let's assume, and I'm just going to go with a very high number of $400 million. It's not, but especially, again, it all goes about how do you go ahead and make a determination on what something's worth? Well, you could do it by square footage. You could do it by the profitability. Nobody wants to buy something and lose money on it. So you're going to pay an amount that's going to give you a rate of return that you're acceptable with. Here's the problem for him. So if it goes for $400 million, and let's presume that he has a $100 million mortgage on that property. He sells for $400. He has a $100 million mortgage. Well, you know what else? The second he sells that, he's got New York state taxes to pay. And based upon the fact that, it's not what you are now, but at the time he's a New York resident, New York City resident, the property is in New York City, you're probably looking at like a 50% tax on that property. So he ends up with $200 million minus the $100 million. There's basically $100 million left over for the sale of what he calls a trophy property in downtown Manhattan across the street.
And I'll just add one thing, which is none of these things have to do with his own business acumen, such as it is or isn't. It's going to be given over to a receiver, a neutral party, who will be thinking of the value of the LLC, and in conjunction with the judge, will decide what to do with it. You're right that the proceeds will go to Trump, who owned it before, but these decisions are all out of his control, which, you would know better than I, but I think that is in itself a huge kind of, affront and frustration.
But the receiver's first job is to dispose of the assets at the highest possible, rate available, for the sole purpose of paying off any judgment that this case may end up ruling upon. So
back to the 500 million or more, right?
Exactly. And there's not $500 million of equity in all of these assets, especially after you pay the tax to Uncle Sam on the sale.
So you really do see this, Michael, as the corporate death penalty. At least if it's not reversed on appeal, because obviously he's cruising for bruising almost on purpose at the level of the judge. He expressed frustration in court. Did you see this? He gesticulated when it came out that, why don't I have a jury? So he knows where the cliff he's driving off.
Yeah, well, he doesn't have a jury because his lawyers made a mistake. They could sit and they're blaming each other. You have Alina Habba, who in my opinion is the one who made the mistake, my opinion. She, of course, is blaming Chris Kise. I don't believe he was even involved in the case at the time. There's a box to check off.
Right.
They checked the wrong box, and now all of a sudden he's being deprived. Always the victim, right? He's always the victim. He's being deprived of his right to a jury trial. Now, some people believe that it could be a strategy and that the strategy is to keep bitching and complaining about it, create an appealable issue, and also to garner sympathy from these MAGA morons so they keep sending him more and more money. I don't know. It's with Donald, it's impossible to figure out what really went on because everything is a lie. Everything he says is clouded and tainted. And so it's very hard to figure out what went on here. But my opinion, if asked, they made a mistake.
I mean, I've learned more about it. It wouldn't have been automatic, but they certainly could have tried. Yeah, I was just on TV and I said, look, this trial, on the one hand, it's both very complicated and very simple. So the complicated one is the former accountant on the stand and generally accepted accounting principles and clause 15, subpart 3, asterisk. But the simple one that Tish James's lawyers keep going back to, 4 words, it's the lie, stupid. So, he can try to challenge the professional responsibilities of Mazars and others, but we're talking about whoppers that he told. And that the judge, by the way, so far as we can tell, he's getting frustrated with the lawyers because, among other things, they're not just being ponderous, but they're trying to retread ground that Engoron's already put off limits about fraud itself, about the statutes of limitations and the like. So, there are evidentiary issues on the remaining counts, but they always come back to, when you say 30,000 and it's really 10,000 feet, it's totally bogus to say, oh, it's just, subjective evaluation. You do it in good faith, and they lied, and it's the lie, stupid. That's the ball I try to keep my eye on here.
Yeah. So let me ask you this then. How quickly, because you brought up that whole issue of the gag order for whatever reason, and as long as I've known Donald, and as well as I feel that I understand him, this one I don't understand. He knows Engoron already warned everybody. All right? I'm not playing these games. All right? The next thing that Donald does is he goes on his Truth Social and he posts a photo of the law clerk of Judge Engoron with Chuck Schumer, making all sorts of wild rumors that, they're having some sort of a relationship. Lies. It's no different than what he had Matt Gaetz do to me when I was sitting there at the House Oversight Committee and the night before testifying, Gaetz sends me a text message, hey, just so you know that we're going to release all this information about you and women, and rest assured, your wife isn't going to be too happy about it. Well, I showed it to my wife, and she's like, huh? And I was like, exactly. All right, it's bullshit. All right, nothing's... And then, of course, he then retracts it, apologizes for it. Sean Hannity actually writes the apology for him and all that. This is part of their game. They want to fuck with you and your family. They want to cause you as much pain as they possibly can. That's fear. Yeah. Which is no different than why he filed that $500 million lawsuit against me. It's all about fear and obstructing justice.
Now, we don't know just what Engoron told Trump and his lawyers backstage on Monday. But if he said, by the way, don't even think about messing with my court personnel, and this is, as you say, his sort of professional, long-standing clerk. She gets to ask questions of the witnesses and the like. Then yes, it's like, why did he then just, step on the third rail? I expect it was more general, but then he did it. I think it's kind of significant. He does it. The judge is really pissed. He reads him, everyone, the riot act, and it goes down. Trump complies, and in short order. Now, leaving the court, he still trashes Letitia James. He still trashes the judge. So we'll see if I do think this is the kind of judge who would have no problem expanding a gag order and eventually saying, you do it again, you're going to jail, and following through. But, the real the Super Bowl, as it were, of the gag order is going to be in the D.C. trial and Judge Chutkan, who's having a hearing October 16th. And I think for her purposes, it matters that somebody now has kind of, opened the Pandora's box or whatever, has actually imposed a gag order and made him stick with it. So we'll see if Engoron does more. But, he did the most narrowly tailored possible, where Trump couldn't have any argument, how can I run my campaign if I can't trash court staff? But still, he fell into line, and quickly. That, I thought, was noteworthy.
So then how quickly do you think that Trump will violate this gag order that Engoron placed on him? Because
I don't think he will, because it's so simple, Michael. It's just, all he has to do is avoid trashing court personnel. I mean, people on his staff. That's at least what he said. He said, take this as a gag order. He didn't really even issue one. And what he said is, personal attacks on members of my court staff are unacceptable. Of course they are. So, and you can take what I've just said as a gag order. Super narrow. So I don't think he will again trash court staff. Big deal, because he might still trash the judge. And so if the judge expands it, then we'll see. But this little one that he issued, I don't think Trump will mess with it anymore. What's he got to win from, trashing court staff anyway?
Nothing.
People don't even know who those people are. Yeah. Although the
totally
court
agree.
Staff, of course, know. And if somebody were to threaten her now, that's what you're always worried about, is not Trump, but his crazy lone wolf acolyte, like with Judge Chutkan. A stranger in Texas calls up and says, we're going to kill you. In that sense, he is worse than a mob boss, because he has crazies out there that he really doesn't control, and he says crap and they spring into action. It's a really harrowing situation for the justice system.
Yes, it is. And that needs to be expanded. I'm due to testify. I've been subpoenaed, as you're well aware, by the AG to come in as a prosecutor's witness in this case. And one of the concerns that I have, and I've expressed it both to them, I've expressed it in the media. I know that Judge Engoron, and rightfully so, certainly has police protection. I know the prosecutorial line, they all have. I know now, God forbid, something happens with the clerk. When she's at work, there's officers everywhere. They're in the courthouse. What about the witnesses?
Yeah.
What about those of us that they're asking to spend how many days being cross-examined and and then direct examination and cross-examination? How many days? And then at the end of that, what about Michael Cohen? So what are they going to do?
Yeah,
They're going to walk me to a cab?
I'm sorry to say, Michael. I mean, my answer is totally, but you're in a sense being overly generous. You are a category of one. You figured in the opening statements of both people. It's arguable that the centerpiece of the Trump defense, because it's bogus to say we're going to call 130 people. Maybe they call a tenth of that. They're going to do everything they can to dirty you up, and they'll, there's some things that they can work with. I wouldn't be surprised if your cross-examination lasts 2 days, and it's going to be very public. You're the guy who brought all this to light, and you've already paid a huge cost, but the risks are still higher, and I don't know what to say about that. It's ultimately the lookout of the DA's office, but really, what can anyone do? So, I totally hear where you're coming from, and I really do think you're a category of one in this lawsuit, both in terms of how much time you're going to have to put in, and they're going to want you to prepare down to every question. And how much you're going to be the focus of the defense that Trump is going to mount. So, yeah, I can totally understand why it's something that worries you and worries your family.
Yeah, I mean, look, I still want to live my life.
Yeah,
I still walk around in the streets. I still go to restaurants. I'm not walking around, with protection.
Right.
There are times that I have people that want to come over, thank me, shake my hand, take a selfie. But then I have the occasional where they start cursing at me, yelling at me, throw shit at me, threaten me. You never know in today's mixed up, crazy MAGA world. You don't know who they are. You don't know what they're carrying. You don't know what their intentions are. And you know what? While I want to see Donald Trump held accountable, and I have done more to ensure accountability than anybody, and yet have received abso-fucking-lutely nothing. I've asked for nothing, and nobody has given me anything. I've even gone to the court.
By the way, you could ask for something, and they'll give you. It won't be enough, but there are things that they'll do. But look, we just found out from Mitt Romney that senators were scared to vote for impeachment because of the costs and risks to their families, and you are out front and center. This is sort of the dead center of what is so noxious and autocratic about him. This is what fascists do. I resist the analogies too quickly to 1933 and the like, but they try to normalize violence and institutionalize fear. And I can only imagine what Magellan would do if they could operate with impunity with respect to you, Michael. It's really true.
And it's unfair. And yep. I can't believe, when I was first subpoenaed and I reached out to the prosecutorial line at the AG's office, there were, it'll probably be one day. It'll be one day. And in my mind, I know this is crazy. It's like people always say to me, you look tired, you look exhausted. I'm mentally tired. I really am. And the mental tiredness creates the physical tiredness. It's hard to sleep because my mind is constantly running.
Right.
And 3 days to be on a stand. I did that already. I did that the time that I testified before the House. Yeah. The day before, I testified before the Senate Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. And the day after the live House Oversight Committee hearing, I testified for another 7-8 hours before the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence.
Yeah.
So I know what it's like. It is exhausting. And here, I assure you, Cliff Robert, Alina Habba, Chris Kais, they have already made crystal clear that their intention is to bloody up Cohen, right?
They have a Michael Cohen binder, Michael. You can be sure that's like this already. Yeah.
And look, I don't know what they intend to ask. I certainly hope that it stays focused on this case, that they're not talking about, oh, well, did you have a fist fight in 5th grade with little Billy in the parking lot of your number one school, et cetera, et cetera. I hope that that's not where they're going, because I'm not there to play fucking games, and I have a very foul mouth and I don't give a shit. I really don't. I'll be more than happy to turn around and to say exactly the way I speak here, raw and unfiltered, when they want to start coming at me.
Will you have a lawyer there for yourself?
Yes. Yeah, so Danya Perry and her entire team will be there. But remember something, and she's great. She's beyond great. She's not allowed to object.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the whole problem.
You're not a party, but you put your finger on it with the Billy in 5th grade. Everything you get, and you're good at this now. You just straightforwardly answer, tell them whatever the facts are. Don't look like you're hiding. But when it gets afield, or when did you stop beating your wife? There are forceful objections that the DA should be making. And at least
the AG in this? The AG in this? The AG in this case. And let's not forget, by the time this bullshit is over.
That's 403, that's 401, that kind of stuff, yeah.
Right. But remember, when this bullshit is finally over, then I'm supposed to be testifying before the Manhattan DA for the criminal case in there. So there's so much that's put on my shoulders. There was
Do you ever think about the day you first walked in and tried to get a job there? And the road
I
not
didn't.
Taken.
No, that's not even the story, my brother. Yeah. He asked me to come work for him. He asked me to come to meet him for lunch. He owed me about $100,000 in legal fees.
Oh,
and he turned around and he said, yeah. So he had said, no, but I was outside. I was over at the firm Phillips Nizer. And so he turned around and he said to me, I'll tell you what, why don't you come work for me? He goes, leave that sleepy old firm and come work here as my executive vice president and special counsel. And I was like, and then I was like, well, what about my $100,000? He goes, what, do you want to get fired on your first day? He didn't want to pay it. But on top of that, he realized that there was something that I would be able to do for him.
Yeah.
Never thinking, of course, it would be this, but believing that there was something that I can do for him. So look, Harry, you recently wrote that, and I quote, I think there's a part of Trump that is almost proud to be the subject of criminal charges. As he said about paying no taxes, it shows he's smart. But to be accused of having been a sham all his life and grossly inflating his fortune, that's an abject humiliation. So do me a favor and discuss with my listeners the impact that him being revealed as a sham will have on the public at large. I mean, do you think that MAGA fanatics who would vote for him, even if he shot someone in the face on Fifth Avenue, finally would walk away as a direct result of this?
So now we're getting not just about him, but in the response of the electorate. We're getting, really into questions that I usually find inscrutable. But I'll just say this. He really cares. I honestly don't think he doesn't want to go to jail, but I honestly don't think he cares that he kept those documents that he shouldn't have because they're his. I honestly don't think he cares that he tried to foment an insurrection because, that shows his power. But my sense is his whole life in New York, the real players turned their nose up at him, never really accepted him as a real player. This gets all caught up in weird Oedipal issues with Daddy. And is he a success, or was it all a kind of, smoke and mirrors operation? And my sense is this really does hit him where he breathes. Now, would it have the same? So in that sense, I do think abject humiliation about says it. Now, what about on the electorate? Because the people who, you just have certain irrational people that they don't even spout, reasons. If people understood he was a failure with a capital F, is that a big part of why they're supporting him? Because they think he's a good businessman. It strikes me that there's some for whom that's a cohort, and knowing that he, it's a house of cards might matter. But I think you'd still hear a lot of people say, well, he ran the economy well, or he gives it to the libs, or whatever they say. So now, at this point, however, remember, the guy's never had 50% in his life, and we're dealing, if some event, shaves off 2, 3, 4%, that's huge in the overall calculation, because everything for him, everything is riding on the roulette wheel coming up 00, or whatever the analogy is. He's got to win. So in that sense, a small marginal impact is a large one on the political scene. But I think the Trump support has shown itself to be sufficiently irrational over the last several years that even if the emperor has no clothes of the very sort he most cares about, that he's some kind of financial wizard, which is I guess people who really know think it's a joke. I think he'd still have a lot of support. The one thing he's ever been good at is bilking people for $200 donations that they can't afford. I assume that would go forward. But he's always, he lost $1 billion as a businessman. What more do you have to say? He never made a dime. True. It's all losses. So, yeah.
What's truly amazing is guys like Walt Masterson. Yeah. He's out and he's trolling a lot of these MAGA maniacs.
Yeah.
And he's asked the question of several of them, if Donald Trump is found guilty and he's in jail,
in a criminal case,
would you still vote for him? Mm-hmm. That's presupposing some of these trials, these criminal trials, take place and have a result that ends up Donald to be incarcerated. He's actually incarcerated. Would you still vote for him? And these people turn around and they say, doesn't make a difference what he does.
Right.
That if he has to run this government, this country from jail, he could do it because he's Donald Trump. And I scratch my head and I say, holy shit. Yeah. These people are so delusional. It's funny. Even a mother doesn't think like that about her child, right? Where, like, if you said to my mother, do you think that Michael could run the U.S. government from prison? She'd turn around and she'd laugh in your face. What are you, an idiot? Right? I mean, the fact that somebody would even vote for him at this time, at this point in time, forgetting about what the ultimate results will be. Twice impeached, 4 indictments, 91 charges against him, accused and found guilty of sexual assault. On top of that, his company found guilty of fraud.
And he lies all the time. So all these things that he says he does, he doesn't do, if you care about anything. I know, I've really scratched my head on that. I do think part of it, is that no matter what, from jail or the 8th circle of hell, he really represents the grievance that a lot of people in red America understandably have for, these like high-minded cultural elite types who they think look down on them and give out preferences to on the basis of race and all that stuff. If that is, and I disclaim forever the authoritative psychological explanations for Trump, but to the extent that's part of it, that abides wherever the dude is, but it's just, you can't overstate the stakes of the upcoming election. If he loses by 2 votes and he doesn't manage to cheat, everything goes away and it's all good. But if he wins, it's really the possible end or gravest crisis ever to the American experiment. The stakes are just so high. It's crazy. I was talking to somebody. Apparently, Sam Bankman-Fried is now on trial, but there were people who were talking about, would it be worth $5 billion just to give to him and make him go away to some island somewhere just for the the country, and it'd be worth 100 times that, of course. But because in part we've been so careful about trying to insulate from charges of you're politicizing this. It now goes, he's in the maw of the law, and I don't know if he's convicted. I think they'll pass. The time for some kind of broader solution, just like Nixon, just get the hell out of here, stop talking, and we'll let you slide. That's gone. I think he's now being dealt with the way every other accused criminal is, and the price for just getting him the hell out of our lives might be many years for him in a Georgia state prison or a federal pen. That's what it may all come down to. But it beats the alternative.
Yeah, but then again, there's still X number of witnesses. Let me I'm going to bring up a question on this sort of point. Since we're speaking of the upcoming trial. You actually wrote something, any one of them, right? You actually wrote that, and I'm going to quote, "Pretty soon, the Trump fraud trial will turn into a forensic slog, and Trump will stop showing up."
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, he's already gonzo.
Yeah.
He's already on his way back. He was there for 2 days. He did Monday and Tuesday, showed up Wednesday, and by lunchtime, he's already on his way back to Florida. And he already missed
part of that. Is such bad form. He already just absented himself during testimony. I can't tell you how low class that is. But yeah, you're right. So he's gone now.
He's gone. Okay. So Tish James, in this fraud trial, and her prosecutorial staff will be making progress every single day. Witness, testimony, witness, more testimony, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Also, you can bet that the 100 plus defense witnesses, as you said, I'm going to say, will ultimately turn out to be like 1/10 of that amount. Sort of like Trump valuations at issue.
Right.
So do me a favor, unpack for me
Yeah.
what they bring to light during this forensic slog? And what else can be done to Trump that hasn't already been done, financially speaking, of course?
Okay, great question. And the short answer is a lot. So, as you said yourself, Michael, the 250 is just her straight up estimate of how much is ill-gotten and therefore has to be disgorged under New York law. But they'll be going at that. And then there are several counts. Some of them turn on intent, as the main fraud one didn't, and they'll be going at that. But the form of it will be this very dull, with the exception, I gotta say, of witness for the prosecution, Michael Cohen, will be, guys with green eye shades saying, oh, it's right here. He said $10 gazillion and oh, it's right here. It's actually worth $1.50. So, but that's with a lot of paper, et cetera. Now, normally you'd be worried, is a jury following, et cetera. But this is being done to a judge, and the judge himself pronounces himself really familiar with fraud. Moreover, they know they're going to lose, and he's going to clobber them. So what they should be doing is enough to preserve issues on appeal. But at least based on this first witness, so this is one reason I said you may need to prepare, my friend, for 2 days of cross-examination after 1 day of direct. They take this first witness, the Mazur's accountant, and they go through every single thing to the point where the judge himself says, this is ridiculous, and bangs the his seat. Something you don't want any judge to do, although again, he's not in front of a jury, he is the jury, so that matters. So we're going to have, on the one hand, the slog of proving, but on the other, what's always coming through that Tish James will be emphasizing is the shining consistent point. It's the lie, stupid, and he must have known about it. There are basically there are 6 counts remaining. It's a conspiracy and substantive count for basically lying about some monies and bilking insurance companies. And then they will have these, slogs of trying to get things on cross-examination. The other drama, of course, will be if Tish James calls Trump or Eric Trump or Donald Trump Jr. to the stand. And I don't think people recognize they can still assert the fifth. If they do, and Gorin can take it because it's a civil case, as a inference they would have had bad stuff for themselves. But they've already waived to the extent they've had depositions. They can't now say, as to questions they answered before, oh, I invoked the fifth. So that much will come up. But it will be, the reason I say forensic slog is the biggest part of it, and the sort of theme of it will be establishing on paper, never great jury appeal, but they have it buttoned down. You can be sure how, these valuations were really way out of line, and maybe some eyewitness testimony. Well, Weiselberg said this, or I told Trump that. That's a boring time if you're a juror. But he said months and months, but I think it's going to be maybe 6 weeks to 2 months for the prosecution, with some long cross-examinations. And then what's Trump going to do? If he takes the stand as a defense witness, and he can be called and treated as a hostile witness by the prosecution. If he gets up and takes the stand, now he's waiving his Fifth Amendment rights, and he'll get less lacerated. And there's just a lot of things. I think when push comes to shove, they're not going to have much to say. And they know they're going to lose, and they want to be preserving issues for appeal. But this is a bloodbath, and it's the bathroom that in the mansion, as it were, that he cares the most about. And I think we're looking at really killer findings. Again, the fact finder here is the judge himself, who Trump has been trashing, who has already said the lawyers, there's obviously no love lost. And, he's going to have to pin all his hopes on the appeal for the New York Intermediate Court. So that's my kind of quick thumbnail of what the next 2 months portend.
So let me ask you this, being a former prosecutor yourself. So now you have Michael Cohen on the stand.
Yeah.
And you, Harry, simply because we've had many, many conversations, not just here on Mea Culpa, but privately, offline. What question do you think that defense counsel will try to press me on? Their goal, of course, is to not just disparage me, but to try to create the image that I am not a trustworthy witness, and that the case should be dismissed or the amount should be reduced or whatever it might be, because the case, which was started by Michael Cohen's testimony, cannot be relied upon because he's not a credible witness. And I like how this ass clown, lawyer of theirs, turns around
Haba,
and says, no, not Haba.
Kai's? Okay.
No, not Kai's. It's the third one. I always forget his name. He's got the two. No, he's got the two first names.
Okay, whatever. Yeah, sorry.
I always find that he put out this thing that Michael Cohen lies to everyone, and that he's not a trustworthy witness and so on. First of all, he happens to be the same lawyer that was involved in the case when I sued Trump for the legal fees that we won. He lost every single motion in limine as well. I think he's a plaintiff's civil litigator for personal injury claims. So you got a personal injury lawyer, you got a parking lot lawyer, and then you got Chris Kise, right? My question to you is, what do you think that they're going to go after? And do you think it'll be something that is part of this case, meaning it has to do, or do you think they're going to try to go after personal issues or something else? I just don't know, because I did sit for like a 7-hour deposition with them. Are they subject to the issues that were raised in the deposition, or is this a free-for-all? I'm just curious.
Okay. Here's what's going to happen, I think. And don't whether or not they can set up some motion. They're going to be going at first and foremost credibility, and then second, a little bit bias. You have it in for Trump. He put you in this position. He didn't pay you, blah, blah, blah. But it's going to be, if you didn't beat up little Billy, but you bilked him of his lunch money. I mean, so it's all going to be every lie or act of dishonesty you ever committed. They have to have a good faith basis for going at it, but that's what they're going to try to. They're going to try to lacerate you as someone who it can't be relied on, and all that stuff becomes fair game. You've been there, this. I think you're excellent at not trying to wriggle out or pretend. If that's what you said, that's what you said, and you just sort of in a bland way. Well, I'm not giving you. Sorry, I don't mean to. You've got plenty of good lawyers, starting with Danya. But yes, credibility and everything. It doesn't have to have shown up as a practical matter. There's some little rules, but as a practical matter, it doesn't matter if they asked you about it in the 7 hours. Anything and everything that could cast your credibility in a bad light, and the Attorney General can only protect you so much during cross. Presumably on redirect, they come back and explain why, well, actually that one was true and this, but it's going to be this really unpleasant couple days where it's not really about the case, because by testifying, which you're doing under compulsion of law, of course, you're putting your credibility at issue in front of the judge. So, anything, taxi medallions, anything that they can try to persuade is not too crazy far afield, because that's a different kind of objection, but goes to your credibility, honesty, etc. becomes that's not just fair game, but that'll be the grist for the mill again and again and again and again. I bet you're going to have, because they have some things to do with, but they can't, there's only so much, but you're going to have some objections and some expressions from the judge saying, we talked about that already, counsel, please move on. Yes, we know that Mr. Cohen served, etc. But it's all about credibility and making you out to be, completely unreliable.
Understood. even assuming that I took little Billy's money in third grade, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's the relevance to this case?
Great point.
And what's the relevance? What's the relevance even to my credibility? Here's the deal. You know this, again, as being the prosecutor that you are and were. They certainly used the testimony of Sammy the Bull Gravano to go after John Gotti. They didn't kill anybody here. So if his testimony is honest and truthful for whatever the specific crime is, what's the difference for everything else? I mean, is it just simply to beat me up? I'll tell you where the problem that
Shall I answer
have
that
some
first?
issues with? Of course.
Yeah, so it's a great question. And by the way, John Gleason, who practices on 61st and put Sammy the Bull on, you should have him on sometime. He's a lawyer's lawyer, because you're exactly right. At the end of the day, the AG will stand up and say, look, he's telling the truth now, and that's what matters. But under the rules of evidence, because you're a witness, it is little Billy might be just too far afield. We only learned that much about Michael Cohen's credibility, Your Honor, so exclude it. And he'll say, yes, I'll exclude it. But anything we learn about credibility becomes relevant under the rules of evidence because you're a witness. Even though it's got not a damn thing to do with this case, the way it will work is they want to get every black mark they can. Then they argue that to the judge, in theory, just to say, don't believe his testimony about this case. And then the AG will come back and say, you can believe his testimony about this case. You saw, Your Honor, his demeanor. He was very upfront about things that he had been untruthful about before, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a kind of a prosecutor's here it's a kind of a lawyer's game to dirty you up, but ostensibly, and this is a legal reality you'll be dealing with when you're called. The relevance is they get to make any point they can about your credibility, even little Billy's money, unless it's too crazy, on the theory that for that reason, the fact finder, being Judge Engeron again, not a jury, should not believe everything you're saying about the actual case. That's the notion. And they are gonna they have only so many cards to play. That's a big one for them. They're going to play it big time. Sorry to say.
And me too. And what makes it even more abusive is I'm not subject to X number of hours that they have me for. They could bring me back for a week.
That's right.
I mean, This is
at some point Engeron will say that's enough. And he is the kind of guy who won't let him go on forever and ever. And I don't see that being reversed on appeal. But that's, if you were down in Mar-a-Lago, who knows, right? With a less strong judge. So you're exactly right.
My hope is that Engeron really holds them to a narrow field, simply
but that
because
field is still credibility in general. But yeah, he's a good judge, I think, for these purposes. Like even today, the first witness, he chastised. He said, "This is ridiculous," about just how long they were taking on the first accountant. So, but they didn't stop. That's the whole problem. It's great. Slap your hand onto the table. Issue a gag order for only your, what do you call it, for your clerks. Yeah. Right. What about the rest of us? This is the whole problem. So I get it. Yeah. Meanwhile, Donald Bender of Mazars, the witness,
was still sitting there. He's still sitting there being asked a multitude of questions. Now, the hope is that the questions that are being asked of him are germane to the case. That's the only point that and what happens hypothetically if they, in my opinion, very much like what happened with some of the GOP members at that House Oversight Committee hearing, where they got nasty. I mean, it was like low blows and nasty and the whole 9 yards. At which point in time, I hit back, with them and so on. Can I? I don't want to weed and die in his garden, but I think what she'll tell you is,
That is the AG's job. Your Honor, please instruct the lawyers for Mr. Trump not to badger the witness, or yes, that's right, blah, 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 or maybe even does it himself, or Greenfield, who were told participate sometime. Or here's one other thing that will happen. At a certain point, you'll have the Tish James's lawyers come up and say, asked and answered, sustained, asked and answers, sustained. And but he is, the one thing Engoron doesn't want to do is create a record where they had actual things to bring up that he prevents them from and make some kind of due process thing on appeal. But in general, you're your own guy. You've gotten far in life without this advice, but most witnesses would be told, let Engoron and the lawyer handling your examination be the people who say that, and not you. But that's you'll see what Danya and those guys say. Yeah. By the way,
I just wanted to make the conversation. I'm actually really prepared. Just so you know, I've never gone into anything unprepared.
It's not a matter of preparation. Yeah. It's a matter of getting your goat. Will they say shit that will get your goat? I think so. You're a human being. And you feel not well treated by the whole system here. So that's the point, is what you do so not to get your goat. Of course, it's different. Again, people should always remember this. Judge, not a jury. You lose your shit, say, yeah, how much is the judge going to put on that, as opposed to juror 5 saying, wow, did you see what happened? Yeah. Yeah.
So again, yesterday you wrote about Donald Bender of Mazars, and while still on the stand, said that Trump Organization provided supporting data for financial statements, and each year certified it was Trump Org's duty to provide accurate information. Do me a favor, explain this whole issue to my listeners, what this means in the bigger picture for the trial.
Okay, here we are in the simple part of the case. It's the lie, stupid. The thing that Trump keeps saying, by the way, there was this big disclaimer that was from Bender, not from Trump. But what it means is it's clear from Bender's testimony that Trump had an obligation to give all this documentation, and he didn't do it. Bender said, I was basically there to compile it, and they didn't fit their responsibility. What does that all mean legally? I would suggest basically next to nothing, because it's the lie, stupid, and whether they knew about it at the time. So it's a sideshow whether Bender should have done this, that, or the other thing, as long as they're telling whoppers, as they were, that could have influenced, and it could have. I mean, even though Trump says, they got their money back, but they'd have had more money back if Trump had been honest, because they'd have charged a higher rate, etc. All this stuff about did the accountants do their full job? I just don't think under New York law it actually matters. So that's the notion. They'll try to say the accountant should have done it. It's their fault. Nobody was hurt. But if you look at this very expansive law, I mean, I could imagine if it weren't Trump in a different situation thinking, wow, this is pretty harsh medicine. Do we really want the state to have it? But be that as it may, they do, and so it's all a sideshow basically. But the argument is, Bender and others who come after him will say we did our job, and the Trump guys didn't do theirs. Trump will try to say the opposite, but at some point on page 46, there's that valuation that's just a lie, and that's what really matters. The rest is, as I've said, a forensic slog. That's how I see this trial.
I agree with you. So let me switch gears for a quick second and discuss why you believe Trump did not try and move his Georgia case to federal court. Because you wrote in the LA Times that Trump, and I quote, has determined that the state court is better for him than the federal court. That means that all the factors that might have favored removal came to be outweighed in his mind. Do me a favor, unpack for me why you think that this is the way it is in this specific case, because it may also go to the reason why that Trump's not having a jury trial. here in this New York AG's case, some positing that New York juries are not fans of Trump and that it would be even worse for him. So unpack that for me.
Sure. And thanks for the opportunity, because I'm in a minority here. Most people said, oh, look what happened to Meadows, and it would have been really hard. He would have had to testify. He wouldn't have had to testify, and he would have preserved an issue on appeal, and Trump doesn't care about taking long shots. I think we have to conclude he decided that state court is where he wanted to be, and why. He's seen, I mean, you would know, the personal qualities and animosities that underlie this better than anybody, but he's got an African-American Obama appointee Democrat who's a seasoned judge who's been really tough on removal. And that would be the guy who would preside over all the trial, make all the evidentiary determinations, et cetera, on the one hand. And then back in state court, the very young, just elected, up for re-election in 2024, so subject to those pressures. Federalist Society, Republican, appointed by a Republican. And I just think in Trump's worldview, that's what made the difference. Give me the Republican young white guy. And I think he's probably wrong. That is, I really want to make clear that I think McAfee so far has been excellent and will remain excellent, but to me, there's people are just missing what the way Trump thinks when they say, oh, it was a long shot, and they're saying, oh, he can just go on Meadows' coattails. That means he would rather be in federal court, and it's just not true. Even though people would say an immunity motion normally better in federal court, but I think his simplistic, you could say crass, you could say racist, I'm not necessarily saying it, sees the two judges and says, give me this guy in state court, and adds to it, by the way, that totally, suck up little paragraph because I know you'll do so well by me, etc. So to me, he changed the default, and he's going for state court because he likes the judge better, and that's Trump think to me.
Yeah. So look, as the hour, of course, goes by quick,
boom,
we had this many, many times. Here's my last question for you, because obviously last night was a very big night with the removal of Kevin McCarthy as House Speaker. I mean, unfucking precedented. I mean, we don't have a speaker. Who the hell knows? In like 30 days or 40 days, you have the showdown again for the debt ceiling and whether or not the government's going to shut down. This is just, once again, really bad timing. Are we doomed for somebody worse to fill the position? Because I'm hearing the same as everybody else that Jim Jordan now has his name in the hat.
Steve Scalise.
Matt Gaetz is another one that they're talking about, though most people think that Gaetz did this to Kevin McCarthy because he wants to run for governor of Florida against DeSantis. Tell me this. Does this secretly bode well for Democrats in 2024 as the GOP basically descends into chaos and infighting? They are going to beat the shit out of each other, very much like McCarthy did to Gaetz last night, very much like another, the guy from, I feel, where is he from? Maybe Alabama did, or Tennessee did to another Republican. They're all now attacking each other for the removal of McCarthy. Well, McCarthy was my friend, and this is a personal issue, and it's childish, it's churlish, it's yada yada. All this infighting and chaos, does it do anything for the Democrats in 2024?
So I want to follow my credo that I use on TV, which is, just answer the damn question, and I will. But let me just say first, it's terrible for the country, and the clown car is now, the wheels have fallen off. It is the biggest mess and just the high water mark of irresponsibility. But on that narrow political question, not my expertise, I think so. I mean, I think they look like a total mess, and they're affiliated very much. It's not just they, but especially the crazy, handful, half a dozen maybe, MAGA types, all of whom are beholden to Trump. McCarthy got into trouble because he was sucking up to them and because Trump insisted. That's why he did other things like the impeachment inquiry. To me, it's very vivid evidence of like, we got to get these clowns out if we ever want to have a working government. And I think most people in America would like to have a working government. So on that narrow question, Michael, it's, you get what you pay for it, because not my field, but I think so. I think it's got to be good for them.
I want to just finish with this thought for a second, because it dawned on to me yesterday at night. If Trump, who is presumably going to be the Republican nominee for 2024, if he wanted to show and act that he was presidential, that he exudes strength and capable, he should have picked up the phone, called folks like Matt Gaetz, right, this chaos caucus, and said, knock the shit off,
back down.
Vote, keep him in, back down, we'll figure it all out, right? I need you to do this. Act like a statesman for his party. Instead, he let McCarthy just basically hang, right? Which he, of course, would have let Mike Pence hang on January 6th. But he went ahead, he let him, instead of doing anything, which just goes to show you, it's just another act of Trump that has no basis in anything. It's all of, again, his lies. It's all of his inactions. It's basically, he brings nothing to the table. And that's really the saddest part, because you're right. America needs to be, we need to have a full government working on behalf of the citizenry. And we don't have that right now. And who knows when the next GOP clown is going to come out of the clown car, as you properly put it. So, Harry, let me thank you, my brother. I appreciate you for everything, the insight, the advice, or the sort of historical advice onto this. And there's so much going on. So much.
All right, Michael, nice talking to you. I'm actually going to be gone for most of October, so I won't see you for a bit. Keep the Republic together, please, and I'll see you in November.
Safe travel, brother. Bye.
Bye.